Welcome everybody to the second installment. This is now WrestleMania Night 2 reviews. Let's go ahead and get into WrestleMania, right? First is the Fiend versus Randy Orton. Now, to keep the Fiend away for so long, only for this badass entrance to happen, I think, the payoff was cool. It was worth it. I don't mind waiting this long for that. So essentially the entrance starts with Alexa Bliss coming out, and then there's this huge Jack in the Box. Alexa then rolls the Jack in the Box until the Fiend comes out, and honestly, I just thought that was really cool. There was a red visual now, and the Fiend comes out, and it also felt good to hear that music again. I really did. So we're back into the red lighting that is going on during Bray's matches. Listen, I don't mind the red lighting. I know some people don't like it. I really don't mind it. Now, the match starts with the Fiend basically dominating. Randy had little to no offense here, maybe 2 or 3 draping DDTs. Bray goes for the Sister Abigail, to which he's then distracted by Alexa Bliss, sitting on a chair with a crown of thorns and blood dripping all down her face and all down the back of her head. There is blood everywhere. And Bray's distracted and memorized by this. Eventually, we see a distracted RKO. Bray is pinned 1, 2, 3. Now, keep in mind, Randy Orton won off of 1 RKO and 2 or 3 DDTs. In my notes, I couldn't even write that Randy won. I wrote everything I listed, plus the distracted RKO, and then, are you fucking kidding me? Because, are you fucking kidding me? How do you have Randy Orton win off of just that? How do you have Bray Wyatt be gone for so long only to lose again? This should have been a redemption for him, and instead we got the opposite. Just saying, it shouldn't have happened like that. Next we have Natty and Tamina versus Shayna Basler and Nia Jax. This was an okay match. The match essentially starts with Natalya and Tamina getting some offense in the beginning. Tamina gets tagged in, and to my surprise, she gets an ovation when she was tagged in. I'm kind of surprised because most of the time Tamina did not get that much reaction. And maybe it is the fact that she hasn't been seen in so long. Maybe it was a little bit of crowd sweetening, because I'm told that's what went on yesterday. So who knows? Maybe that had to do with it too. But I was just very shocked. There was Tamina chants throughout this part of the match, but not to discredit the match in any way. I was just very shocked by that. There was a cool spot where Natalya slingshots Shayna Basler. Tamina catches Shayna with a super kick. I thought that was really cool. After the match, there was a flurry of submissions onto Natalya. Basler is then working on Natty's ankle, and then Nia Jax, I think, gets tagged in, or she comes in, and her and Tamina are now facing off in the match. And this was really cool. I thought this was the line of the night. Nia Jax is just pushing and beating down Tamina. And she says, "You ain't shit. I am King Kong, bitch." That was line of the night. Really liked it. Not too big of a Nia fan, but, I thought that was really funny. Then there was the sharpshooter from Natty onto Nia Jax, to which is then countered into the Karafuda clutch. Natty essentially fades, and that ends the match. Overall, it was an okay match with one cool spot here, and then Tamina saving the match with a very cool line. Next is Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens, with Jake Paul, I guess, being there. He just kind of existed there. Didn't really do much. He got his own entrance. But again, didn't do much. Or anything. The match was good. I really liked it. There was a pop-up powerbomb from the get-go. It was really back and forth. I liked the half-and-half suplex onto the apron. I also liked the fisherman superplex from the top. Sami Zayn hit the haluva kick, and then Kevin Owens is now draped on Sami Zayn's shoulders, which was a Battleground 2016 callback, which I thought was really cool, and I thought it was, and JBL confirmed it because in the commentary he said this was just like what happened at Battleground 2016. And you know, when I saw this, it made me think, is Sami really going to win off of the same finish? It actually got me. So Sami goes for the second haluva kick. Kevin intercepts with a super kick, hits another super kick, then stuns Sami. Kevin wins. This was a good match. The post-match stuff with Logan Paul, didn't care for it. Logan Paul comes out, he endorses Sami, and then he shakes Kevin's hand. Sami takes umbrage to this and then tells him, like, what are you doing? Paul shoves him, and then Sami and Logan Paul are both stunned by Kevin Owens. Could not care less about this part. Could not have cared less. Good match, though. Next, we have the pothead Matt Riddle versus Sheamus. This was actually a surprisingly good match. You know, I'm not a big fan of either guy, but, you know, I thought it was actually a really good match. Sheamus really shined here, in my opinion. I really liked the starting offense here. Then there was a couple of highlights that I really liked. For example, so the overhead belly-to-belly superplex from Matt Riddle. Then there was this part where Riddle is entering the ring and he somersaults into the ring using the ropes, and Sheamus quickly hits the bicycle knee and for a near fall. Then there was a small botch here where Sheamus goes for a white noise from the top rope, but then he lands on his feet and then hits a regular white noise. Honestly, I don't really care too much for the botch. It wasn't the worst botch we've seen in wrestling history. I think, especially with maybe Sheamus lost his footing. Maybe the ropes are still slippery from last night. Who knows, honestly. Really not something that I care too much about. I'm just glad neither man got injured. Then here we get into the finish, which was Matt Riddle attempting a springboard lion salt, to which Sheamus catches him in midair and hits the brogue kick. I thought, you know, this was a really cool finish enough, but when you see the replay and you see Sheamus, the tip of his feet catching Matt Riddle in the throat, oh my god, you then realize just how like brutal that finish was. And hell, even Matt Riddle was bleeding at the end of the match. You know, you're gonna stay down. That's absolutely one of those spots that should not have been a near fall. Absolutely loved it. Great match, great finish. Let's get into a Big E versus Apollo Crews in what is the Nigerian drum fight. So Big E and Apollo, they're trading kendo stick shots to each other, and I thought that was really cool how they started the match. I had no problem with it. It was actually something I haven't seen before, so yeah, I like it. Then we see some of the greatest hits. Big E hits a spear through the ropes onto Apollo. Apollo hits a Death Valley driver onto the ring apron. I don't know if that's Apollo's into Apollo's moveset now, but I like it. I like the spot. Then there was this other spot where Big E is laid out onto the bottom steel steps, and then Apollo is standing on the ring apron, and he attempts to throw the top steps onto Big E while he's laid there, and Big E moves out the way. You know, for a second it actually made me think if Apollo was gonna actually hit Big E. It actually got me. So you know, that was really cool. Big E moves out the way. Later on, Big E gets onto the ring apron and then hits a Uranagi to Apollo, and Apollo lands on the bottom steel steps. You know, that was painful. And then that leads into the finish where Big E sets up the table. He sets up the table, and then Apollo has Big E onto the table. He goes for a frog splash to put Big E through the table. Big E moves out the way, and then Apollo just straight up goes into the table, takes a big ending from Big E, and then the brother of Omos is attacking Big E now, and thus allowing Apollo to win his first Intercontinental Championship, thanks to the brother of Omos. Cool. This was a good match. Really liked it. I will say my only critique is I didn't really think that the Nigerian drum fight was really utilized. Like, I didn't really see too much of like the drums coming into play or anything like that. That's my only critique of this match. Otherwise, I really liked it. And for a very first Nigerian drum fight, hey, cool. Good for them to kick it off. Next, we got Asuka versus Rio Ripley. This match was good. It was fast-paced. There was a lot of offense, a lot of striking offense from both Asuka and Rio Ripley. There wasn't too many highlights that I can really talk about, but there is one that I really liked. Rhea's healing it up with Asuka here, you know, mocking her, and I think she actually got booed at one point in the match. And then finally there was a good back and forth. There was a DDT off of the apron from Asuka to Rio Ripley, which I thought was really cool. Asuka then goes back into the ring. I think this should have been the finish. And I think this should have been the finish because, you know, a spot like that really should not have somebody kicking out. If you land from the height that Rhea Ripley landed head first, you are not going to get up from that. You're just not. No human is going to get up from that and, you know, kick out like that. Or nor should they, I should say. So I think that should have been the finish. But I understand that they didn't because they wanted Rhea Ripley to win. But then in that case, have Rhea Ripley do that to Asuka. But it's all a moot point. Later on, there was a superplex. And then there was a really cool sequence where Asuka hits the armbar, and then, which is countered, and then Asuka counters it into an Asuka lock. And then Rhea Ripley rolls through. And this then leads into a riptide from Rhea Ripley onto Asuka. Rhea Ripley then wins. It was a good match. Again, not something I'm going to go back and rewatch, with the exception of that, you know, brutal DDT. But still a really good match nonetheless. Next, we got the main event, which is Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan versus Edge. The match itself, very fast-paced. Really liked it from the get-go. They all start brawling. And I'm going to just list off some of the highlights here, because it was a really good match, right? And just a lot of cool spots that I'm never going to forget. You know, first there was an execution onto Jey Uso into the steel steps. Jey Uso was then walked out by the ref. Bryan and Edge duke it out in the ring with Roman Reigns laid out. And then there was another spot. This I thought was really cool. Edge attempts a clothesline. Bryan ducks. And then Bryan goes into for a suicide dive, who is then caught by Roman Reigns and is then hit with an overhead belly to belly. And I thought that was really cool. Then later on in the match, there was a Superman punch attempted by Roman Reigns, which is countered into the execution. Then Edge goes for the spear, which is then countered by a Superman punch. And then after that, there was a spear attempt from Roman, which was countered into a sunset flip. And then later on, there was the double spear collision, which all happened one after another. You know, it just felt like one after another. I couldn't even write my notes in time properly to keep up with all of this stuff. It was really cool. You know, all of the spots made sense. I really liked it. Later on in the match, we see Roman Reigns putting the steps into the announce table. I like this. I like this part where Roman Reigns is playing off of the Roman sucks chants. Roman is then on the steps, gives a powerbomb to Bryan on the announce table, and you know, that was a brutal spot. And then if that wasn't enough, right after, Edge hits a spear and spears Roman Reigns off of the steel steps. I thought that was really cool. Later on, there was a tug of war for a chair that Edge had, and then later on, they pulled the chair so hard that a piece of the chair ripped off, and it makes me wonder if that was an accident or if that was intentional. Either way, it was cool, and it even played into the match where Edge goes for the crossface, and then after that, he plays the piece of chair into the match, and he's using that to wrap around Roman's mouth, which looked sick. And then right when Roman looked like he was about to tap, Daniel Bryan catches his arm and then hits a yes lock. So now Roman has a yes lock and a crossface applied, to which Bryan and Edge are looking at each other. They're both giving each other headbutts at this point. And then they get into a beatdown part where Bryan is beating down Edge. Then at one point, Bryan looks around. Now, I'll be honest, in this point, I really don't understand why Bryan looked around. You know, maybe I'm just not understanding it, or maybe he's just looking around, you know, to see the crowd. Hey, maybe I'm just looking too into it. My bad. But then we see a part where Bryan goes for the running the running knee, and then Edge counters that into a spear, and then he also hits a spear to Roman, and he goes for the pin. 1, 2, Bryan pulls the ref. I somehow did not expect that. I honestly thought for sure Edge was going to win this match. So maybe that's why I, fell for it. Finally, later on, Edge has both men on the floor, to which then he goes for a concerto. He hits a concerto onto Bryan successfully. This is where Jey Uso comes back into the match, interferes, and he comes back into the match, and he takes a spear for his troubles. Roman Reigns then spears Edge, and he hits a concerto onto Edge, and then drags Edge and stacks Edge on top of Daniel Bryan to then pin both men. One thing I will say, Roman Reigns is the 2021 version of Triple H in 2003. He has all of these crazy-ass matches, these crazy-ass finishes. And one thing I really like about Roman Reigns, love his pay-per-view matches. The one thing I like is how every single spot is so unexpected, yet makes so much sense. And I don't know. I find it oddly satisfying. And I find it oddly satisfying that at the end of the match, I'm left with a bad taste in my mouth because I really, really wanted Roman to lose. And I like that because that brings out the wrestling fan in me. And pardon the noise, my dogs are making a whole bunch of noise. But it brings the wrestling fan out in me. And I have nothing but love for that. It makes me wonder who is going to take out Roman Reigns. And I actually got mad at the finish, and not because, it's go away heat, but it's because, god damn it, I want Roman to lose. So they're obviously doing something right if you're pulling the wool over me. I really liked it. Overall, that's night 2. And thank you everybody for checking it out. Have a great day.